So let's get back to our material sponsors. Walt Tools, Hardscape Systems, the Mortar Sprayer, Spider Lath Quick Spray, Sack Creek Bag Mixes, Products for their plaster mixer, Benchmark Foam Billet Sales, and Vertical Artisans. I'm going to go through each of those here briefly. Walt Tools True Pack C. I was really impressed with this product. We mixed it up with a 60-pound bag of regular high-strength concrete mix. You don't have to use high-strength concrete mix, but we did, and it just worked out fine. We had a 32-foot-long seat wall. We didn't experience one crack. Very surprising. And it ashed out really nice, and it colored up even nicer. Structure Coat. This is just a great product, very sticky, extremely fibrous, kind of a nuisance to deal with. I've tried pumping a product like this through a pump, and it didn't do very well. But I think I got it narrowed down to where it could possibly be pumped if I have the right nozzle. But a good method of putting structure coat on, especially for ground level things, is the mortar sprayer, which is what we used. Easy to clean out, and even with the mortar sprayer, it's still pretty gnarly. But this stuff gets to about 10,000 psi, tremendously fibrous, and you only need about a ½ inch of it. And this is what basically structuralizes your foam and makes a perfect hard coat for carving. TruePack X is what we use for our carving coat. Many of us have used this. It's a wonderful product. Highly recommend it. Protect. There's also True Block is what we used for our countertop. Wonderful, low sheen, and very nice. The stains that we used Way, Boulder, Autumn, Bluestone, Buckskin, Hazelnut, Rust, Dark Walnut, Evergreen, and Tobacco. For the rocks, I basically covered most of the under the seat wall stones with Way as a start. I then introduced Boulder, a little bit of Autumn, Buckskin, Hazelnut, Dark Walnut, and then I spritzed with Tobacco, Evergreen, Rust, Bluestone. For the bigger rocks, I put down Evergreen, Way, and Autumn. And then, because they were darker, with the shadow painting technique, I went with darker stains on top of that. Those of you who are familiar with my methods or have purchased the core curriculum, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Walt Tools Contractor's Kit, we did use rollers, and I don't think we used any of the 3-ways this time, but we did use the rollers and the texture trowels and the wedges. The Hardscape Systems unit. The unit itself comes on a skid with 9 4-foot bases that are flexible, 9 4-foot mold tops. I'll cover each of these, 20 flex rails, 9 locking tabs, and 10 bags of structure coat. The mortar sprayer, aka the ankle biter. I had Nolan actually create this sprayer specifically for this type of seat wall because it's really 0 to 18 inches off the ground. So I had him give me an extended arm, lower down the entire piece, and it works out really, really nice. Spider Lath. Wonderful product. We use that for basically the cast in place seat wall. This will never happen to you if you use Spider Lath. Some of the worst cuts I've ever had in my life are from that nasty metal lath, blood lath we call it. It's safer than metal lath. It makes for stronger concrete. You can cut it with scissors or a razor knife. It stops the cracking from translating into your artwork. It costs about the same as your metal lath does. Saves you big time. And trust me, if you try it, you're going to love it. Quick Spray. This is just a fantastic unit that we got to use at the World of Concrete. Special thanks goes out to Thomas for carting that thing out there. Man, this thing is just a dream machine. It really delivers, and it's easy to control. He's got a special nozzle that he made for us that I'll be showing you later. I just couldn't say, I can't say enough about how much I was impressed with the speed and how easy it was to clean. He literally cleaned it with a 5-gallon bucket of water right there. I was expecting him to take it off and go over to the washouts, in the other lot. And I mean, I turn my back for a couple minutes and I turn around and it's already clean and set up. So just a great machine, and I highly recommend it for you guys who are serious about getting project and materials up and out and ready to go. It's just it's an investment, but I think it's one that will pay off in the long run for you. B&M Products, this particular mixer I did bring out there. I like this dually better than the single, because with the single, it just it has a tendency to bind up in the bucket and to spin that crazy bucket. With this egg beater system here, it gets a lot done, and it's probably one of the fastest mixing mixers out there. Not as far as speed, but as far as how it basically cyclonically creates that mix to go up and down and inside itself, and it does a very, very thorough job of getting it mixed very quickly, very rapidly, and the faster you can get that mix hydrated and ready to go, the better. Benchmark Foam, a shout out to these guys. They delivered some billets of foam for me that I used for some of the other pieces, some of the bigger hand cut pieces. Benchmark, they're located in the Dakotas. Great service, great products, and for those of you guys who are looking for foam block sales, you can call Jamie and just tell him that you're a vertical artisan. There are many foam guys out there, but if you guys are going to be using some foam blocks for bigger projects, you might want to consider calling him. Of course, vertical artisans. It's just, in my opinion, and of course it's my opinion, there's nobody that just delivers the type of teaching that we deliver. I really try to give you guys the best of the best, and I don't hold back. I'll tell you how it is. I'll give you the secrets, good or bad. And for those of you who have been students for quite some time, you'll know that information changes. So things, innovations pop up. There's new methods, new techniques, new things that take place. And, of course, keeping on the cutting edge of information, I think, is very important in our industry. All right, Hardscape Systems. I want to start off by giving special thanks to Don at Walt Tools for the last-minute addition to the rock, the spinning rock. I was originally going to just have that rock just sit there just as it is, and that would have been cool. But he really kind of raised the bar for me by putting it into a situation where I was forced to come up with a solution to rotate that thing, and we just had a good time figuring that out. And I can't thank Don enough. It was a brilliant idea, and it really did. It was a great piece that interacted with the public. And we just had a blast with it. So let me get through this. I know there's some hands that are raised. I will get to your questions. Unless you're having a difficulty hearing me or hearing what I'm saying, I'll pull all the hands down. If you do have a question, just put it in the to the questions box. And if you can't hear or you need to switch from your computer to the a telephone number or an audio ping, then I'll send that to you individually. Just raise your hand for that, and I'll deal with that. All right, Hardscape Systems. First of all, I just wanted to give a shout out to Sacrete and Amerimix for donating everything, and I got this short video here so you guys can see a little bit of exactly what we're talking about, the full impact. We got the fireplace in the back, we got the ice rock, and of course we've got a rotating rock. It was stunning. People were really taken by it, and it delivered. Let me tell you, we've got a lot of compliments with that, and I couldn't have been more happier with it. The rocks, the top of it. In fact, I got to be honest with you, my favorite day was the very first day. But in preparation to this project, you can see this is kind of an overview of the entire project before we even left Chicago. On the far left, I've got the ice rock, and the far right, I've got the fire feature. Now you can see I just used a regular old fire, generic fire grill, basically, or fire pit, fire burner. That end piece is actually a removable piece that allows us to open it up and adjust the ignition and the lighting process. I did go with a half a pony propane tank, basically a half a propane tank, it stood about 11.5 inches tall, which made it very easy for me to hide. You can see how we just got it kind of slipped through underneath of that, and it's right down there on the rock that's labeled Rock 2. So the end caps were custom made out of a billet. The potted plants at the top, those were all scooped out. The centerpiece with the freestanding rock, that was a little bit more tricky. I basically had to slice that rock in half and create like a welded, fabricated kite formation in it, and then fill that with channel out the one side and put concrete in there just so that it could. I basically didn't want steel on foam. I wanted it to be embedded in concrete, then glue the foam back together. And this just kind of ensured the fact that it wasn't going to rattle around in there. And if it was just steel on foam and there was any kind of movement whatsoever, it would basically destroy the foam. At least if there was like a structure coat inside of that, embedding the concrete and the steel inside of that foam piece, it was going to offer a lot more resistance and hold the weight better. And then, of course, the bearing that we created, I'll probably have to draw up some special pictures for you, for those of you who are interested in that, and I'll have that posted in the core curriculum. But overall, as you can see, I just used a huge 20 by, I believe it was a 15 by 20 tarp. And I did this on purpose because one of the rules out there at the World of Concrete, we have to protect the asphalt, the parking lot. So I figured if I'm going to use a tarp, I might as well just set this thing out there. I used some spray paint to mark it off so that we can easily get it out of the skids and into full operation. And there it is, removed. So you can see the pattern, the outline. Anybody can follow this pattern. I marked the pieces accordingly. Piece of cake, guys. Real easy. And you could do the same for those of you who have a warehouse or something. You can prefab all your stuff, get out on some patio somewhere, lay it down, pin it in place, and then just razor knife it out when it's all said and done. It just works really, really good. So tonight we're talking about the Hardscapes unit, the flexible unit. It's basically, the system is comprised of 3 pieces, notwithstanding the pieces that I cut to add to it, of course. But these 3 pieces, you've got the base, you've got the top, which is wider, which I'll call the tray. And then you've got the 2 rails, one standing up and one on its side. Those rails are not just regular foam rails. They actually have a piece of plastic that's been glued or has an adhesive sticky to it that sticks it to that foam rail. And what that plastic does is allows you to bend it without breaking the foam. If you just tried to bend the foam, it's going to bend a little bit, but ultimately it's just going to crack and it's going to break on you. And that piece of plastic that lines the outside edge gives you the ability to bend and basically contour that thing as much as you need to glue it in place and get those side rails up. Now, the base and the top are identical with this flexible unit, whereas they have a proprietary oh my gosh, proprietary cuts that allow us to bend the base and the top without breaking it. And the cool thing is these tops, when we set them down, we could just remove it's got a banding of tape around it that keeps them together. But as we bend it, we take the wedge that comes from the inside and then we immediately put it on the outside. And then it also gives us the ability to support that piece. Now you can destroy this by over bending it or being rough with it. So you do want to kind of be gentle with these things. They can handle a little bit of abuse, but if you really get on it, I mean, you're going to crack it. It's only 2 inches thick. So both the base and the top are cut identical, but the center or the base is basically a little tighter, and obviously it's taller. The base stands about 16 inches, and then the tray is an additional 2 inches. So right here you can see in the lower right-hand corner, you can see how I took the wedge out of the inside and I put it on the outside. And that's what you do. You basically just take those inside wedges and flip them, and you can see how I have 2 wedges on the outside edge, and that just kind of helps this thing keep its shape and keep its form. You can also see how these 2 pieces butt together and create a perfect bow tie. Now this bow tie, I'm actually going to shrink it down a little bit, tighten it up a little bit, and try to get one more cut. So the bow tie it won't be as deep or as wide, because I do want to kind of keep the symmetry of a semicircle without too much flat space. And one thing I did notice is when I have it this deep, it kind of gives us a little bit of a hindrance. We have too much of a flat surface space. I did have to try to, fit it in or cut back some of the inside to kind of shorten that up a little bit. So I am going to make a slight adjustment on the pieces that will be going out in the future so that those will actually not be as severe. But the purpose of these are so that you can drill down into the patio, put some fiberglass rebar, and then fill that with the high-strength cement. That serves 2 purposes. Number one, it locks it into place and creates both a mechanical lock to the patio. It also creates a mechanical lock to the actual units themselves. But secondly, it also creates as a tremendous support for the countertop, basically the cast-in-place seat wall that's going to sit on top of that. So engineers like to see that type of structure, and so that's what we're going to give them. And it's pretty deep. I do have a locking piece in there just to kind of hold it together, because obviously I was not going to drill into the asphalt and pour those concretes out there at the World of Concrete. So the piece right here that you're looking at in the center is ultimately just some high-strength saccrete. I cut the billet specially to house the bearing that we welded that will hold the spinning rock. It was anchored to the asphalt with a couple of anchor bolts, but that is a solid piece of cement that is going all the way down to the asphalt. And of course, that's Schedule 40 pipe that's welded, and you can see the bearing. And I have a piece of 5/8 inch cold rolled steel that goes through that bearing that's also welded. So it was real slick. We've got 2 bearings, top and bottom, and then we put some silicone in there to keep any water or cement to get into the actual bearing itself. That was all preparatory for the rock. You can see how I just laid it out easily. I've got some tape around there to kind of hold those pieces together because there was a little bit of weight, and we did have some the pieces were starting to splay a little bit from the pressure of the cement that we just poured in there. But that was all done, with basically within a half an hour of getting that thing plumb and getting it completely level. That was like the biggest thing. There was a grade in the parking lot, a slight grade. So just getting that lined up and level and poured was really the objective, and I think that was Sunday. That was Sunday afternoon. All the rest of this stuff, I literally just took it out of the box and put it in place and put some heavy boxes on top of it to keep the wind from blowing it around. So this is the actual prep day, and not a whole lot happened. We spent like maybe an hour just kind of tooling around, Everybody was chomping at the bit. Everybody wanted to put it together. I literally just took the skids apart and just laid it out and just basically watched everybody do their thing. After we got the boxes secured and got our bearing level and poured, we left for the day. I really didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to just start afresh in the morning at 9 a.m. and start working it. So 9 a.m. Monday morning, we got the tops out, and as you see in the base, we basically just started putting those together, getting those fitted, the tops, getting the wedges pulled out, and getting those things installed. And just really, we did use some 16 penny nails to just kind of keep things, locked in place. Worked out really easy. I mean, literally, guys, this was so fast. All the pieces basically fit the same, and it really just, the only special cut I did have to do is around the bearing. I did have to break this top panel in half and actually take a straight, a long, extendable razor and just cut out a little hole so that bearing would fit right up in there. Other than that, we really didn't have very much to do. The flexible side rails, once we got those bent, we used some spray glue. There was a couple different types of spray glue that we used, but we basically used a foam to foam glue. There's quite a few sprays that are out there. If you go to Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, most all of them have a spray adhesive that takes about 8 to 10 minutes or whatever to set up. Some of it burns the foam, some of it is really sticky, but once again, we bent the pieces, we got the rails installed, we sprayed the rails, we sprayed the foam, and then we used some 16 penny nails to keep it in place. This piece right here, I did use a couple custom pieces, and here's some spray glue, foam to foam spray glue that Chris is using. You can see at the end there where the tray meets the hand carved billet that I made for the special end buttress. That's where that special piece is. And the only reason why I put that special piece in there is because that's a curved surface, and those end rails don't really marry very well to the curved surface. So I just kind of took a scoop and made a custom piece that fit right inside of that, and that would hold all the material from leaking out the sides out of that curve. So there is a little bit of thought process. If you are going to make some custom end caps beside the traditional, just the square, 18 by 18 or 16 by 16 end cap, that's, 16 inches higher than the rest of the seat wall with a cap on top of that for lighting or whatever. I kind of wanted to, kick it up a notch and show some scallops and show some, some variations of that. But I just basically used, you can see the 16 penny nails. We squeezed it down with the glue. We let the glue tack up for about 2 minutes, and then we put the rails down, and then the 16 penny nails stuck right in there perfectly and held it in place. And that was really beneficial. So it's literally that easy. Getting it to conform, you can see how I've got another wedge, a key that locks that top plate to the bottoms. Super easy to do. Everything fits perfectly right in the way it should, fit. Getting those pieces all lined up, I just started from one end. My whole tray, cast in place countertop basically, was I think about 32 feet long. So I just kept, using those pieces all the way to the end. And then I did have to take a razor knife and do some special cuts just for the end piece. And there's another look at it. You can see how some of the wedges like fell out or whatever. So you might have to spray a little bit of adhesive or tack it, or maybe just take a piece of duct tape and just kind of hold it in place. If some of them do pop out, or, the wind blows it out or something, it's not a big deal. They fit right back in there, and use a piece of tape to keep it in place, or a piece of, or spray some adhesive in there. They will stay. It's not a big deal. Once again, we had about 8 guys and which made everything really easy. But this could easily be done with just a handful of guys. It doesn't really take a lot. Once your tray is down, then you want to just take some standard landscaping felt and just kind of cut it out and lay it inside the tray. The reason why I'm having you do that is because there is some spaces, and I don't want the material from the countertop mix to kind of bleed down into that and create like sinkholes, or have water drain out of it or whatever too quickly in that fashion. I'd much rather just put the felt down and just lay a felt all the way through that whole thing. Just cut it out, and then just let it just kind of sit in that tray. You could take some 16-penny nails and drop it in there just to kind of hold it in place, and you should be absolutely fine. Once that's finished, then we step it up and put some double stick tape on the inside of the rails. Now make sure that your decorative inserts are wiped off. I did have a little bit of release that was kind of on the rails, so I had to kind of wipe those down. The first rail that I put in place didn't stick very well because it did have a little bit of release. Get some of the most stickiest double-sided tape you can and just kind of line the edges, because what you don't want to happen, and when you're pouring your countertop mix in, is for your decorative insert to move around. So you want to have that double stick tape there kind of fit in there really nicely, so when you do pour your cement, you don't get cement, coming up underneath your decorative insert. That'll cause a problem. Next step is to cut the spider lath to fit perfectly inside of that tray. Because I was doing curves, I did have some special cuts. Just make sure that you overlap the spider lath 4 to 6 inches. And you can use a lot of the drops, just kind of piece it in there. You're basically just getting all the surface area covered with spider lath. You'll then, as soon as that's finished and you get ready to pour some of your cement in there, you don't want to pour your concrete on top of the spider lath. What you want to do is you just want to put a little bit of your material down first, then take the pieces that were pre-cut and lay it in there first, and then embed your spider lath. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm installing the decorative inserts. Once that the double stick tape is in place, then your inserts will be just like your rails. You just connect them all the way around, and at the end you're going to have some pieces you'll have to cut with a razor knife or a regular saw. Once those inserts are in place and they're stuck, you can take a little bit of release and tag some release on it, and get those nice and released. Here's one thing that I didn't do that I probably should have done. Keep the spider lath away from your insert. And the reason why I don't want you to do that is because when you're finished and you strip the insert, you're going to see spider lath. We had to go back and we had to trim some of this stuff out after the fact. So if you keep your spider lath, basically like a half an inch or even an inch away from that outside edge, you're doing pretty good. So we did, for the most part, keep it about an inch away, but there were like maybe 1 or 2 areas where we just kind of missed it, and it did overlap it slightly. Once our inserts are all in place and we're good to go, we're going to mix up the TruePak C and start putting it in. So what happened here is I started to lay it down, and then what I ended up doing is I had to smash all that stuff through there just to make sure that it worked out itself and embedded itself properly into the spider lath. So what I'm looking for here, guys, is I'm looking for the material to go under the spider lath so that the spider lath has at least, a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch of material before the lath is down there. I think that's going to be the best ultimately for you, and that's what you want. After you do that, then you just begin to pour your countertop mix in there as normal, and then just screed it off and start to work it level it out, basically. I thought this was great. This was the first countertop I've ever actually done. I just like, man, this was really cool to me. I mean, it all just came together. I mean, we were still, honestly, we're still within the first hour of starting. I mean, we're still in the early morning. It's not even 10 o'clock. It might be 10 o'clock at this point, but we're still in the early morning, and the sun wasn't even up yet, and we have already got our mix starting to go. So I mean, it was like everything was coming together. The rails were holding up fine. I just want to caution you too at this point, you don't want to put weight or lean on these outside rails. Once again, they were designed to hold just enough, just enough weight with the mix. Don't get on it. Don't accidentally lean on it or think it's going to support you, because it's not. You can break it, and then you're going to have a catastrophe on your hands. And, you don't want to do that. So kind of be cognizant of, how much weight and how much you actually put on, or how much pressure you put on these outside rails. They are extending out there, about 6 inches. So granted, you'd have a 2-inch rail, and then you have another, inch insert, but you still don't want to put any excessive weight on there. Just continue to screed it, and then as you continue to just, one guy can, keep pushing it out there, another guy can come back and just start vibrating it. That's the one tool that I forgot to bring, was like a DA sander or something that could have created vibrations. So Chris and Don just went back and just basically tapped it to get a lot of the air bubbles out, and we just kept on pushing it through. It really turned out great. You can see that we're loose enough, we're wet enough. The materials, it performed extremely well. Maybe if Chris is here tonight, he can give us a little bit of insight on that. But we're just working our way around the 32-foot piece, vibrating, tapping the sides, putting a finish on it. And then this was the most difficult thing for me, was just waiting until that mix was firm enough to texture. It took maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. So around 11 o'clock or so, we went through and we hit it with our rollers. We sprayed it down with some liquid release and just tagged it with our rollers. I think we were using a medium rock roller from Vault Tools. I think we also used the coral roller, which emulates the dingleberry roller. And just basically laid a really nice texture. I had no intentions of polishing the top. I wanted it to be textured. Now, I would say probably 2 hours and 50 minutes. I was just chomping at the bit, truthfully. About 2-3 hours into it, it was after lunch. I remember that. I was like, man, this stuff feels great. It's stiff. Let's start cutting it out. So this is the second funnest thing. Your countertop is poured, and now what you do is you take a scoop or a hot knife, and you go back and you cut it real close. You cut the underside real close to the base. And as you do that, the pieces will just start to drop out. You can see I'm just going underneath there, using that heat element and just basically going up in an upward motion, burning through the 2 inches all the way to the concrete. You'll feel the blade will actually stop on the curing concrete. And as soon as you get a good section of that cut, then just go back and just start to pull it off. All those excess pieces, those smaller pieces that were used to hold it up, will drop to the ground. And what you'll have is you'll have some of the pieces that are still sticking to it because of the glue that you put on for the rail, but most of it will just easily pull right off. And delicately, you'll want to just pull that edge off and just start to examine your edge. it's still tremendously green. You can alter it. You stipple it if you need to. If there's too many bug holes, you can address that issue. But I mean, it really only took us about 15 minutes or so, and all of our supports were cut out, and we had a perfectly, within 4 hours, I mean, literally by 1 o'clock, 1:30, this part of the project was finished. I mean, it just was coming together really, really nicely. Next step, spray the structure coat on with the ankle biter. Load that thing up and just start to splatter that thing on there. You only need a 1/2 inch. Protect the outside edge of your countertop. Remember, once again, don't lean on your countertop. It's still very volatile, but it should be, with air both on the top and the bottom of it, you should be, setting up pretty fast, pretty quick. If you've got some big spaces, fill them in with your structure coat, but just move your way through the whole base. And I think we got right down to the last bag. In fact, I was actually 3 bags short. But if you when you're using the mortar sprayer, it's so fibrous, it's so gnarly that just that in and of itself is a great scratch coat. You don't have to come back, and you don't have to hit it again with a scarifier. But you just finish off the rest of the substrates, protect your countertop, protect the seat wall, spray it up, go back, fill in your voids, and when you're said and done, you are ready to go. The outside edge obviously is going to be a lot tighter. There won't be as many voids because you've got your double wedges filled in there. Do the inside, turn around, do the outside, and you're going to be golden. I did show you, this is the gas line that came out. You want to wrap any gas line or anything like this up with some plastic. Structure coat is so nasty when it gets hard. I mean, you're just not. It's going to be a monster to get to separate it. I tried to beat a couple. There was like 1.5 inches of it that kind of packed up on a project I was doing. I wailed on it with a hatchet. I wailed on it with a hammer. We actually had to get in there with a concrete saw and cut it out. So if you have fittings or pieces of gas, on there, that gas lines and such, something of that nature that is going to be that needs to be protected, please put some plastic around it, and before it has a chance to really set up, just kind of pull it off, because once that stuff starts to set, it's a hassle, trust me. So the last thing we did at the end of the day is we put some cardboard down and we sprayed our rotating rock and prepared it. It went on quick and easy. And once again, I did not need any spider lath for any of the foam substrates, but I did use spider lath for the cast in place countertop seat area, because I wanted the extra support there against crackage. And I gotta believe that it really helped in the overall final product. Here we are. After we sprayed that rock, we really just cleaned up. There was really nothing left to do. And I think before the very end, I think I spent, here's Chris, going back and putting some detail in there. Oh, I want to mention this too. On the fire pit, a propane fire pit does translate heat, but it's a controlled heat from the burner. It does have heat. You can see the space that I left there to allow the structure coat to kind of bleed in there between the foam. I did leave, about 1 inch space between all of that stuff. If you're going to use a burner like that, I think you're going to be fine. I don't think that burner is going to get so hot that it melts the foam around there and it's going to cause a problem. However, if you are going to build a custom fire pit where you're burning logs, you are going to generate a tremendous amount of heat on the circumference of that thing, because those walls are actually the barrier. So if you're going to use foam or a substrate like that, you may want to create a deeper space, or even get some sonotubes and create a 4-inch space and just pour solid in there with some heat-treated cement, and get that kind of a buffer on your foam, if you're going to use a foam substrate for that. So I do want to caution you when you're building custom fire pits, as opposed to something that I purchased from a store and I just propped it up there and did a surround. Big difference. Okay, end of the day. I just started hydrating everything. I was really just, not doing a countertop of that length before, and being told it was going to crack in several places. I just started to hydrate it, and I just kind of saturated it with water before I left at the end of the day, and just kept it real wet. I could have put plastic on it. I didn't. I just kept hydrating it. And I might want to add, at the very end of the day, I had the fire rock. I'm sorry, that was the next night. Never mind, disregard. So spray it down, call it a day. That was the end of the first day. We really just kind of gawked at it for a while. It was kind of cool. Voila. 9 o'clock in the morning, quick spray. Our sackcrete's ready. We open up the doors and we're getting ready. Here's something that we did I thought was kind of cool. We wrapped the hose with shrink wrap. I know that by using the quick spray, it gets dragged around a lot. There's a lot of dirt and a lot of material. But if you have an extra roll of shrink wrap, it was perfect. It kept the hoses together. They weren't flopping around. There's no sticky, residue adhesive from, Gorilla Tape or duct tape that gets on your hoses. I mean, if you got some shrink wrap, wrap that sucker up and put a couple pieces of tape around it. It worked out really, really great for the project. Kept the hoses nice and clean. And I know Thomas liked that too. After a short safety meeting of how to actually operate this thing, literally it took about 5 minutes to cover the controls, the operation. Piece of cake. Everybody became very familiar with, how to turn it on, how to put it in forward, how to put it in reverse. Make sure that you have your air hoses connected properly. We are good to go. We start mixing. You can see we covered up our top counter, our seat wall top, with some plastic, and we are ready to spray. And everybody got a chance. I was really glad everybody got a chance to get on this thing. This is a shot of the nozzle. It's a short nozzle. I think it's only 10 or 12, 14 inches long or something like that, if that. Awesome control. I really like the nozzle. It sprayed the material out really nice. You do need a big compressor. I suggest a P185 to operate this particular unit because it's a pneumatic unit, not an electric unit. But they do have electric units. But you're still going to need a compressor, to push the material. Very easy to move around, easy to manipulate. Sprayed everything up. Everybody took turns mixing and spraying. Get those buckets going. When you are the nozzle man and you're working with structure, you pretty much know how much material you're putting and where you're putting it. So it's a great. It's not like with the motor sprayer where you're filling it up and you're just basically getting a simple coat on. You're able to put inches and inches of material on a surface area, providing the constitution of your mix is where it needs to be. If it is too runny, it will just stack up on the wall and start to slide down. But when you get that mix right and it's pumping good, man, you just get through it. We actually sprayed this up in no time flat. The guys that were mixing and taking turns mixing, we actually ran 2 mixers and we just kept that thing going. So it was a huge time saver. Like I said earlier, Thomas, I turned my back. He had a 5-gallon bucket of water. He had that thing cleaned up, the hoses cleaned with one 5-gallon bucket of water. I was impressed. While they were spraying, I was able to start to slick it up and start to work on the design immediately. I used the carve on the fly. It was great. And believe me, I mean, it was quick. By the time I got to the end, the guys were already finished spraying the backside, and we were ready for, we were ready to go. I mean, once again, we are like, this is still, within the first 2 hours easily of starting that day. So I got my basic shapes down. I got my basic lines established. And I had the guys come back with the hose and stack me up some material here and there where I wanted to create some special effects. And man, I mean, we were just like, people were starting to walk around. They were starting to get interested in what we were doing. We did need, we were 6 bags short, and that was my fault because I used the bags in the beginning of the day before to kind of fill in the gap with the countertop, the cast in place countertop mix. However, Herbcrete came to the rescue. Nolan Scheid from Toolcrete, he had some Herbcrete in his truck. We mixed it up with some mortar, and that really saved us. Special shout out to Nolan for having that extra Herbcrete. So big thanks. Thomas from Quick Spray, he had awesome hand, and Jody from Coastal Rock Productions, he was our film and camera guy. They're the reason why I'm able to give you what I got tonight with all this, because I was not taking any pictures. So big shout out to those guys. Don and Greg from Walt Tools. These guys are fantastic. These are my business partners with Hardscape Systems. We have just put together a rock solid method of construction for you guys, and these guys are the brains and the chemical, the chemistry, from the chemistry, the marketing, pricing structures. These guys are all there. Customer support, fantastic guys to work with. At the end, when we were all finished and scrounging for the Herbcrete, we just finished up the end caps by hand. And one of the things I wanted to do was kind of bridge the material from our cap into the actual baluster, the end caps that we were actually created. And this was just kind of an artistic flair that I wanted to add, and it really worked out nicely. I think everybody at some point in time enjoyed the way that the counter, or the seat looked like it just kind of wrapped into the wall and created a curlicue. So that's a great little effect if you guys want to use that on your projects. Curling it in like that had just a really cool effect. Just wet it down a little bit, stipple it with a brush. It's not a hard texture. I actually used a small chunk of the decorative insert to create some of the original texture, and I also used the broken edge or the granite texture trowel to create a lot of the texture to emulate exactly what the edges were. So that worked out nicely. Go back. We literally had the rest of the day just to pimp this thing out. Add detail, add texture, relief it, add more detail. Literally, don't be satisfied with it. If you got time and you're working that material, keep walking around, keep adjusting it. You can see Vincent, he's just, putting a lot of real cool detail in there. Same with everybody that worked on it. We literally had this mix up within an hour, and we just spent the day just pimping it. And that is just great. When you can do that, it's great. When you get a little tired, take a step back, take a look at it, get some perspective. A lot of times if you just walk away, eat lunch, come back, you see things differently. You've got time. You've got time to work it. It's not a big deal. But it just really started to take a lot of shape and started to really look good. Toward the end of the day, as we were cleaning it out, you could see that we're still at a point where I don't have the Herbcrete ready to go yet. We might have sent the guys out to get some more sand or Portland or whatever from Home Depot. But just taking our time, working it out. A lot of people are just, standing around looking at us, and just keep chipping away. At this point in time, right about at this point, we're several hours into it, and the mix. The thing I like about TruePak X is, unlike some other mixes where it takes a long time for it to set up, I actually like the mix when it starts to kick after a couple hours, because, man, you can go back and sharpen up your edges and start to get some of your fractures. If you're sitting there just waiting and waiting and waiting because the stuff is still so soft and supple, I mean, that's not good. I mean, to me anyway, as a skilled professional, I like the timeliness of it, where I can get on there. You can see on the surface of where my left foot is, I'm able to scratch it and carve it up and start to really, effectively get some sharp edges and some nice effects into the mud. Guys are just, working it out. Matt's, doing some decorative work during the clean out. I'm still not satisfied. I love sharp edges. It just looks great when you can sharpen it up. Thanks again, Thomas Quick Spray and the mortar sprayer, for making this job super easy. Yes, you could put it up by hand, but I'm telling you, if you get into some of these tools, it brings such efficiency to your job. At the end of the day, because TruePak X does have fiber in it, and I didn't want hairy rocks everywhere, I just basically took a brush burner and burnt off all the fiber. This also ashes out the surface as well. Gets a lot of the, gets it to a faster state where we can paint it. Third day, 9 a.m. We've literally got 2 days basically into this. And by the way, those 2 days, we had people stopping, talking to us, interrupting us. Honestly, guys, we were not busting our butts. It was a relaxing time. I think everybody enjoyed it. We were all satisfied. We could talk with folks. So it was not, I mean, if we had to, we could have done a lot more work. We could have had a lot bigger project, longer, more effects, et cetera, et cetera. Let me back up 1 second. The Herbcrete came in. We got it mixed up. I got the ice rock and the fire rock covered, and the sun went down. It was after 5 o'clock, and the temperature was dropping. And I came back at 9 p.m. to just texture it, and it was still super soft. I actually waited until 2:45 in the morning, went back at 2:45 in the morning and sharpened up the fire rock and the ice rock until it was finished. It took me about a half an hour, and then I went back to bed. That was the only troublesome thing that I had, and that was my fault, because I didn't have enough material, and I had to go back in the middle of the night just to finish up the hard carving aspects of these artificial rocks. But had that not been the case, and had I had the material there, I would have been able to leave and basically enjoy the rest of my afternoon without even worrying about it. 9 o'clock the third day. We've got all of our True Tint and our True Block lined up. Jody Smith and Chris Lloyd, our countertop experts, they tackled painting the countertop, or the seat top first. We did that before we actually painted the rocks themselves. And so as they begin to squirt and do their wet-on-wet methods to get their particular effect, which was really cool, they watered down the True Tint. I think it was a 60-40 or a 50-50 mix cut, and they just basically put a wet-on-wet with multiple colors and let them kind of bleed together, and it created a really cool marbleizing effect. It was just really nice. And then I think Matt Wagner went behind him with a bug sprayer filled with water and just kind of wet down the surface of the rocks to keep any overages or drippages from affecting the rock work underneath. But it really turned out sweet. By the time they were finished with that, I was able to go ahead and start, squirting some of the stones. You can see I started a little bit on that back piece. As soon as the countertop was finished, we protected it with some plastic, and then we sprayed 3 bags of elephant armor. Special shout out to Elephant Armor. They pulled through. They were right. Their booth was right across from us, and we managed to get 3 bags from them to finish this rock. I didn't want this rock to be heavy. I wanted it to have a very thin application. I could have done it with structure coat, but I ran out. Elephant Armor was there to save the day. I only needed about a ½ an inch or so of Elephant Armor, or less, because there's already a level of a scratch coat on there. I just needed a little bit more material on there. And once I got that sprayed up, I want to tell you guys, on a hot day like that, use a lot of liquid release and work quickly, because Elephant Armor, unlike structure coat, in the sun, it is kicking, and it is kicking fast. So use a big piece of plastic with your release to kind of get most of it knocked down, or get that organic splattering spray out of there. And then, of course, when you're done with that, go right to your palm method, which is easy enough. Just take your nitrate glove, spray your hand with release, spray the rock with release, and use just the palm of your hand. Don't use your fingers, because your fingers will actually leave lines everywhere. Every time you strike it back and forth, you'll leave a line. And don't use your left hand unless you can keep your ring finger up, because if you keep your ring finger down, your ring will leave lines as well. So just use the back side of your right palm or your left palm, depending on if you're righty or lefty, and just slick it up. And it slicks up nice. It doesn't slick everything up perfectly, so it does leave some anomalies, some bug holes, but that actually works to your favor when you're doing this. It looks real shiny and glistery. That's just from the release. But this played out really nicely, and by the time I got this all slicked up, you can see the upper corner there already starting to ash out. That is hard right there. I cannot texture that area. I had to hit all those areas as quick as I could to get some light texture on there, and then beat some texture into it as soon as I could. But when it starts kicking, it's too late. I mean, you're going to get into 1,000 PSI really, really quickly. After that was finished, I got to spray painting the rocks, doing my normal spray methods. Nothing new here, guys. As you know, very cavalier, keeping it random. We did videotape it, so it will be in the core, but it's really a piece of cake. And for those of you who have already taken my courses, no problemo whatsoever. We did use the Orncrete brushes, the extended brushes, the one that's in Matt's hand right there. Those are excellent. As you know, I like to use a faux finishing brush to kind of blot out, things that don't look natural. This brush is basically a faux finishing brush with a long handle on it, and works really, really nice. You can see how things are all starting to come together. And one of the last things we did when that dried up was we started to look at the rock. By the way, the center rock, it's already completely white. It's at least 1,000 or 2,000 PSI already. So you got to really watch what you're doing with that stuff. You've got very limited time. Our tank is ready to be filled or covered up and hidden. I'm just pulling things apart, making sure that nothing, was stuck, making sure everything is good and the gas works for the show tomorrow. The show Thursday. Thursday is the day that everybody kind of walks through and judges everything. I was disqualified. I was disqualified from the event. I could not win the event because I argued and won what I wanted was a 10 by 20 booth and not a 10 by 10. All the rest of the contestants had to do what they were going to do inside of a 10 by 10. You can't do what you want to do and have an incredible effect in just a small 10 by 10. I mean, I needed to stretch this thing out. I wanted people to see how this thing looked over a bigger distance, and I could care less about the crazy contest, for crying out loud. I wanted people to see how cool this was, and I needed the space. So I got DQ'd. Not a big deal. Here we are. We're putting down some paint just hours before. And look at the surface. It really played out nicely. The palm method with release on a mix like that, it just really has a really cool matted bouldery look. You know how there's a lot of weird anomalies and small fractures. Played out really, really nicely. Add some artificials, and we are good to go. Get that flame cooking. And this is Wednesday night, the day before the big dog and pony. We all just kind of had fun. The next day, bam, stand by. We are just kicking it off. We got mobbed. I ran out of flyers. I had a whole case of flyers. I ran out of flyers. I had the Hardscape flyers left over, but the Vertical Artisans flyers flew off the shelf. We had a lot of guys repping VA that day. Man, it just looks sweet. These pictures are good, but it really doesn't even do it good. I mean, there's something about being able to walk around, a piece like this. This was our ice rock. This was interesting, and man, this resonated big time with the public. I took a regular rock, and then I scalloped it so that it had a deep depression in it. And then I fractured it, but I made sure that the fracture started up high and was very shallow. And as it got down to the end, it got very deep. So the fracture is on a slant. The rock keeps the ice. The foam keeps the whole thing cold, so the ice doesn't evaporate or melt quickly. But as it does melt, the water congregates into the crack and bleeds right down into the yard. Obviously, we're on asphalt. It didn't, we couldn't. If I could have, I would have, gotten rid of all that water. But, it basically, as the ice melted, that it just goes through the crack. If you're going to do this in a backyard, man, it's a cool effect, and it really has a great function. Here it is filled with water. Once again, it presents itself very, very nicely for a big party, backyard. You've got that thing stoked and filled with ice and pop and whatever it is that you're serving. Just a really cool effect. And I love how the countertop curls into that buttress. That was just a really nice touch of class. All the outside pieces on the outside curves lend itself nicely for foliage. Plant life. When you're doing this in a yard, you can leave you don't have to be, that could be off the patio even. Let your rocks go off the patio, so that could just go straight into the ground, straight into the dirt. All of those little pieces add, a really nice effect. Here's some more candid shots of the piece here. Here we have, at night, you can see the rock. We cut away the blue tarp, obviously, because it was all jazzed up. So, you're looking right at the asphalt, so you can see my gas line leading out to the area there. Looked beautiful. Even sitting around that small area, a small fire like this does put out some BTUs. Felt great. Nice, cool night. Once again, fantastic job. Wonderful. I got tons of compliments. And the team, great bunch of guys. Matt, Big Dog, Don, myself, Chris, Vincente, James, and Thomas. There's a couple guys I also need to mention that were not in that photo because they had to leave early. Renee, Greg Walters, Nolan, Troy Allman, Dan the Man, and Noli. Just a great group of guys, and we just had a blast. The pricing for the flexible unit, one skid comes with those 9-foot bases. It's basically 36 linear feet. Everything that I did there with the flexible unit, I did not even use 36 feet of it. I had one piece left over, and that whole skid, plus the 10 bags of structure coat, was about $800. Individual pricing for those of you who are interested, the structure coat is $32 a bag. You get approximately 12 square feet at a 1/2 inch. True Pack X, normal pricing $13.50. True Pack C, $8.50. True Tint stains, $40 a gallon. We literally used quartz, and I don't think we even used all that was in the quartz. We probably used half of a quart. True Black Sealer, $34 a gallon. The decorative inserts, there's a variety of decorative inserts. Let me break from the PowerPoint for a second to show you these inserts. You've got the Bermuda edge, you've got the bullnose, travertine, chiseled edge, a couple different types of chiseled edge, bullnose. These are all some decorative edges. Smooth insert edges, you've got chiseled granite, and then an aggressive stone edge. And they all range. These are 3-inch inserts, and these ones down here are 2 1/4 inch. I used, I believe, the aggressive stone one. I think that's the one I used. It was either that or the chiseled granite, either one. Maybe later, Don, you can tell me which one I used. But I used one of these two. But I got to tell you, this chiseled slate looks really cool. I'm almost wishing I would have used that one. But these pieces here all can be purchased on the Hardscape systems. These are reusable. Take care of them, and you're gonna get just a lot of work out of them. They're excellent tools, and they'll last a long time if you take care of them. Things that you might need, or things that you might need to have. I'll go through this quickly so I can get to your questions. Materials, you're going to need your carving mix, your spider lath felt paper, stains, foam to foam glue, double stick tape, 16-penny nails, plastic sheeting, extra billet of foam for additional sculpted pieces, release agent, duct tape. I forgot to add gloves or protection for your gloves, and nose breathers, particle masks. Tools, plaster mixer, mixing tubs, 5-gallon buckets, decorative inserts, chip brushes, mortar sprayer, the HS1, which is the AKA ankle biter, rounded pool trowels, 10-inch, 12-inch, 16-inch, tuck pointing trowels. I like to use the 3/8-inch rigid, margin trowels, squirt bottles, orange crete brushes for faux finishing, an air compressor for your mortar sprayer, unless you're using the big one for your quick spray unit, because then you can just pull right off of that. Texturizing tools and stamps, razor knives, hot knife or scoop to do your modifications, and also to cut out your supports. For those guys who are serious about your business and you're stepping it up a notch with the quick spray, you're going to want to use a P185 or something comparable to that. Electrical cords and garbage bags.